Today we are going to unlock the Divisionist Code. What is the Divisionist Code and how can it help develop our colour expression? Hello, I'm Rob the art teacher. In these short videos I will share art tips, art projects and lesson ideas that you can try at home or in the classroom. What is the Divisionist Code? Our journey begins 100 years ago.
Let's look at this 1906 landscape study by the French Neo-Impressionist Henri Edmond Cross. Examine his choice of colours. What do you notice about the colours he chooses for sunlight and shadows? Can you begin to unlock his system? Did you notice that sunlight areas are mostly yellow and white, and that shadow areas are mostly blues? Great! That's the first step in unlocking the Divisionist Code. Now let's see if we can unlock another secret of the Divisionist Code. Let's look again at the middle section of Cross's landscape study. What else is he doing with his colours? For example, what is he doing with the red-orange brushstrokes? Notice where he places them. Are these shadows? Are they patches of direct sunlight? Or are they something else? As a warm colour, they must be something to do with light. What do you think? Did you guess indirect sunlight or reflected sunlight? You'd be right. See how the red-orange patches match the places where sunlight, reflected up off the ground, would strike the tree trunks and branches. So far, we've unlocked 3 of the elements of the Divisionist Code. Direct sunlight is painted in yellows and white, deep shadows are blue, and reflected sunlight is painted in red-oranges. But there's a 4th element to discover. If we look again at the painting and try to ignore all the yellows, blues, and red-oranges, what do we see? Notice there's a lot of green, and these touches of green are where we'd expect them as they describe leaves of trees and ground plants. We can also see brown used to describe some of the tree trunks. This 4th element of the Divisionist Code is the use of true colours, that is, the natural colours of objects and materials in places between the deep blue shadows and the bright yellow sunlight. We see these true colours in other paintings using the Divisionist Code. We see blue skies, pink sunsets, blue seas, and colourful clothing. While unlocking the first 4 elements of the Divisionist Code, we've been looking at a painted study by Henri Edmond Cross, a rapid oil sketch of trees and sunlight. For the 5th element of the code, let's look at a finished painting by one of his contemporaries, French artist Paul Signac. The 5th and final element of the Divisionist Code has to do with the size of the brushstrokes, and here it gets a bit complicated because several things are happening. First, we'll notice how Neo-Impressionist brushstrokes are uniformly small and they cover the whole surface of the painting, all of a very similar size. We will also notice that mostly each brushstroke is separated from each other. They are not blended together or smoothed out. We are meant to see them as dots, points, or small patches of separate colour. They create a texture of points of colour across the surface, but they are not really describing the texture of objects. Though they come close to this when we look at trees and rippling water, no, they are primarily there to increase the intensity of colours and to introduce colour contrasts across the whole painting. Every small brushstroke of a certain colour will be accompanied by another small brushstroke of a contrasting colour. Paul Signac understood this. Look closely at this detail in his painting of a tree in afternoon sun. See how each orange-yellow brushstroke is accompanied by contrasting colors. In some places, true color greens, and in other places, the shadow blues and mauves of the Divisionist Code. It is this technique of creating small-scale contrasts multiplied across the whole surface of the painting that gives Neo-Impressionist paintings their color vibrancy. It is also where we get the word divisionist from, because each small area of the painting is divided into clusters of contrasting colors, or in many cases, related colors. The Neo-Impressionists believed or hoped that these small points of color would mix together in our eyes, what they called optical mixing. But these points of paint don't mix in our eyes. Our eyes see each brushstroke as a distinct color, separate from the others. And despite the failure of this idea of optical mixing, the legacy of these Neo-Impressionist experiments with color was huge. The legacy of the Divisionist Code stretched all through the 20th century and into our own century. What the artists unlocked was the possibility of combining true observations of the natural world with fabulous expressionist color. Looking at these works by later artists, we see how they took up this possibility with great energy and wonderful diversity. In a way, the Divisionist Code freed color. No longer simply a servant of description, color could also be a means of direct expression. Let's enjoy the variety of these examples before we end our art journey with your own expressive color art activity. Have all these examples got you buzzing with ideas? Let's recap the 5 elements of the Divisionist Code and set you off on your own color expression art project. In reviewing the 5 elements, I think it is useful to see them as a rule of thumb for achieving highly expressive and vibrant color compositions. And for that, the 5th element, how you organize and distribute your contrasts, is the most important. The first art activity is for students who prefer creative self-expression and who enjoy mixing up the imaginary and the real. Once you have chosen your subject, start planning your composition around the contrast between the warm yellow highlights and the blues and violets you want to use for shadows, and see what develops from there as you gradually introduce other contrasting colors. The second art activity is for students who have started making observational drawings and paintings of the world around them. The key here is to choose a subject, location, and time of day or night where you have strong highlights and deep shadows. It might be outdoors or indoors, in bright sunlight or under strong lamplight. Use media that will produce rich patches and areas of color rather than outlines.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like and share. If you want to see more short videos with art tips, lesson ideas and art projects, please hit subscribe and the notification bell